had a lot of names, a couple of names. We know him by Joseph, and we've talked about Joseph for the last 2 Sundays. This will be hopefully our last discussion of him, but really we're talking about God. How God worked through this fellow who was called Joseph. We know him as Joseph. His brothers knew him as the Dreamer, and some other names that we're probably not going to be able to use in church on Sunday morning. They hated him. Joseph had 2 dreams that all of his brothers would bow down to him. And then he had another dream that all of his brothers would not only bow down to him, but his mother and father would bow down to him. And you can't control dreams, but you can control who you tell it to and with what spirit you tell it. And Joseph was more than glad to tell his brothers, who hated him, that they were going to bow down to him. And he actually said to his mother and father, who showed great favoritism toward him, that you're going to bow down to me too. And his dad said, son, we ought not to share that with other people. I don't know if he got disciplined like I got disciplined when I got on the bad side of dad, but I doubt it, because he was the favorite son. Favorite son lost his status because his brothers hated him so much, they decided to kill him when they were away. And when they were away on a business trip and Joseph shows up, they're going to kill him. But Reuben steps in. Reuben's going to try and step in our story today, and his word is not going to be accepted. And I used to be upset by that, because I thought, well, Reuben tried to save him. Well, Reuben didn't try real hard, because Reuben said, let's throw him in the pit, and then he went away, so he didn't have to face the music. The brothers sold him to an Ishmaelite band. The Ishmaelite band sold him to the sheriff in charge of the prisons. By the way, I asked the kids about their dreams this morning, and they told me what the dreams was, and I was going to follow that up with, God can see that you achieve those dreams, and I'm going to have to ask you parents to tell them that, because I forgot to do it. I was so charmed by their cuteness. But God can see their dreams. Funny way to start seeing his dreams. Ended up in prison, and he flourished there. He not only flourished there, he was making his way. He was doing well until the boss's wife cast her lustful eye upon him. And not only her lustful eye, but her lustful hands. And he had to run away. Said, I can't sin against my master, but more than that, I can't sin against my Father in heaven. She made up a lie about him. He ended up in jail. He's in jail. He interprets the dream of a baker and of the cupbearer. The baker's dream was interpreted by, you going to die, son. So he couldn't do anything about it. But the cupbearer, Joseph said, you're going to serve Pharaoh again. Please remember me. And from that we noticed that Joseph wanted to get out of prison. He wasn't happy there, but he was doing the best he could with where he was. And there's going to be a lesson in that as we come to the end of this series. The cupbearer forgot him for 2 years. Folks, that's 700 plus days that he was forgotten there in jail every single day. And he had his key, his get out of jail card free, but the guy wasn't cashing it in for him. Finally, the Pharaoh had a dream. 7 lean cows, 7 fat cows. The lean cows eat the fat cows, and then the wheat had some full grains of wheat, full heads of wheat, and then some that were dried and withered, and they ate the other, which was kind of a weird dream. If you got wheat eating other wheat, cannibalistic wheat and cannibalistic cows, what in the world does it mean? And Joseph is in prison. He's the one that can interpret. Finally, the cupbearer says, oh yeah, there's a guy that can interpret these dreams. And so Joseph goes before Pharaoh, and he interprets those dreams. We saw, I thought I had taken this out of this. We saw God's toolbox in getting those dreams. Here is Joseph, the dreamer, the victim, the administrator, the interpreter of dreams. He administrated the jail. He administrated Potiphar's household. And now he's on the other side. The interpreter of the dreams gets him out of jail. We pick up the story here. And I've just gone over what we've done in the last 2 weeks just to kind of bring you up to speed. And we talked about all the things that God uses to get us where he wants us or where we need to be. And some of those things were very terrible. But Joseph never gave up on God. And that's going to be a key for us to understand that sometimes bad happens in our life to get us to a place where we need to be. We can get despondent, we can despair and say, well, I'm just going to quit, when it could be God working in our lives to get us to a different place. And it could be that we're there for a long time, like in prison for 2+ years, knowing that you're not supposed to be there. You are completely innocent. He's innocent, he's in jail. He could have got law books and studied and said, I want to get out of here. But instead, he depended upon God. And that's the lesson for us. He interprets Pharaoh's dreams. Pharaoh after he interpreted those dreams, this is Joseph speaking. And now let Pharaoh look for a discerning and wise man to put him in charge of the land of Egypt. By the way, we're going to do something that homiletically is not the best thing to do. You don't read a whole lot of scriptures when you're preaching, kind of put people to sleep. But we just got to read these stories because there's so much in there. So bear with me. Read along. Let Pharaoh appoint commissioners over the land, take 1/5 of all the harvest of Egypt. He's proposing a 20% tax. How would that go with the voters in America? Not too well. Take 1/5 of the harvest of Egypt during the 7 years of abundance. They should collect the food of these good years that are coming and store the grain under the authority of Pharaoh to be kept in the cities for food. This food should be held in reserve for the country to be used during the 7 years of famine. He said those cows, that's 7 good years, 7 bad years. You need to prepare for the bad years. By the way, he said, let somebody that knows what he's doing be in charge of this Pharaoh. And then he proceeds to tell him, this is what you should do. And it's very common sense stuff. So that the country may not be ruined by the famine. The plan seemed good to Pharaoh and to all his officials. And so he's going to make him prime minister. We talked about all the dark things that have happened in Joseph's life. This isn't it. Now it's time. Now God said it's time for the dream to come true. It's time for you to do what I want you to do. And all of this has been a preparation for you to be able to do what needs to be done. And now let Pharaoh look for a discerning and wise man to put him in charge of the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh appoint commissioners. We just read that. And then he read that. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, since God has made all this known to you, there is no one so discerning and wise as you. Nobody else. He's probably looking at his wise men when he says this. There's nobody else that got this figured out. There is no one so discerning and wise as you. You shall be in charge of my palace, and all my people are to submit to your orders. Only with respect to the throne will I be greater than you. We noticed last week that this is an incredible set of circumstances that put Joseph's here, because Egyptians hated shepherds, and they had nothing to do with them. This Pharaoh just put a shepherd in charge of the whole country. So there was no built-in bias with him. And so he said, nobody's going to be greater to you nobody be greater than me. I mean, no one will be greater than you under me. Okay? So Pharaoh said to Joseph, I hereby put you in charge of the whole land of Egypt. He put the signet ring from his finger. Man, that's the power of everything. That signet ring, you could do anything. That ring meant absolute power. You know, we have presidential decree, and Congress gets all upset. Nobody got upset when you had the king's signet ring. Bam, it was law. It was law. He gave him his ring from his finger and put it on Joseph's finger. He dressed him in robes of fine linen, put a gold chain around his neck, and he had him ride in a chariot as second in command, and men shouted before him, make way. Thus he put him in charge of the whole land of Egypt. We got sheaves of wheat bound down to him. We got the sun and moon bound down to him. We got the whole world bowing down to him. We looked at the scripture in Ephesians, the 3rd. God is able to do exceedingly abundantly above all that we can ask or imagine, was the version that Andrew read. That we can dream. What was Joseph's dream? That his family would bow down to him. He's got an entire nation bowing down to him. Can God give you exceedingly abundantly above all that we ask or dream? You dream it, God can do more. It just took 13 years for this to come to pass. Started when he's 17. He is now 30 years old before this has come to pass. By the way, the dream has not yet been fulfilled. It's about to be. Everybody's bowing down to him. Pharaoh said to Joseph, I'm Pharaoh. Without your word, no one will lift a hand and foot of all of Egypt. Holy moly. Can you say that in church? Pharaoh gave Joseph the name Zaphanath-Paneah and gave him Asenath, the daughter of Potiphar, priest of On, to be his wife. And Joseph went throughout the land of Egypt. Joseph was 30 years old when he entered in the service of Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. And Joseph went out from Pharaoh's presence and traveled throughout Egypt. Zaphanath-Paneah. That's a new name. He's been called Joseph. He's been called Dreamer. You know what he's being called now? Rescuer of the whole world. That's what that means. Rescuer of the world. Zaphanath-Paneah. Pretty impressive name. He went from watching over sheep to watching over a prison to watching over all of Egypt and a rescuer of the world. And Joseph, as he promised, extracted 20% of all the grain from Egypt's crops, and he stores them in cisterns. Archaeologists have discovered those cisterns, and there have been some wheat in there. As I said a couple of weeks ago, they planted that wheat and it grew after all these thousands of years. Joseph and, what was her name? Asenath. Joseph and his wife have two children. The first child's name is Manasseh. It means, God has made me forget all my trouble. Wow. Think that's on his mind? He never forgets what happened to get him there. All my trouble in all my father's household. Ephraim is the second child's name, and it means, God has made me fruitful in the land of my affliction. You want to know how Joseph really felt? Look at those two names. By the way, look at the 12 tribes of Israel. What are two of the names of the 12 tribes of Israel? Manasseh and Ephraim. What does that mean? That means that Joseph was the firstborn. Firstborn got two portions. So all the other sons got one portion. He got two portions. Manasseh and Ephraim. Thus, the firstborn. Was he a firstborn? Well, he was the 11th, but he was the firstborn. Firstborn means the one that gets the double portion. By the way, that was kind of what that whole coat thing was. Someone asked me today, or they know who they are, said, I can't find any reference to that seamless coat thing that you said. What was your reference? And I said, my professor where I went to school, but I haven't looked it up any other time. So that's a 50-year-old reference. They're not quite 50. And I already looked in one book, and I'm looking in another. I'll see if that's there. So if I can't find that coat of many colors means a seamless coat, then I will retract that statement. And I will say something to Richard when I get to heaven. What in the world were you getting me in trouble? Okay. Anyway, the coat, the gift of the coat, whether it had a lot of colors or didn't have any seams, or it had a lot of colors and no seams, no matter what, it was Isaac's way of saying, you are my favorite son. And that's why they hated him. Another reason, it wasn't that they showed them favoritism, it was that he was going to get the double portion. And that's a tough deal for the other boys. There's a family that had a lot of squabbles going on in their midst. So Joseph was the firstborn. Now there's the lean years. Here it actually plays out. The 7 years of famine began, just as Joseph had said. There was a famine in all the other lands. So it's just not an Egyptian famine. This is over all of the Middle East. Nobody has any grain. Famine in all the other lands, but the whole land of Egypt there was food. When all Egypt began to feel the famine, the people cried to Pharaoh for food. And Pharaoh told the Egyptians, check with Joseph. He'll give you your food. So Joseph is giving the food to the Egyptians who were hungry, but none of the Egyptians went hungry. People in Israel had no food. People in Libya had no food. People all around the land had no food. Where are you going to go if you don't have any food? You're going to go to the place that has food. So they all go to Egypt. When the famine had spread over the whole country, Joseph opened the storehouses, sold grain to the Egyptians, for the famine was severe throughout Egypt. We're not going to look at the politics of this thing. He charged them 20% tax so that they could put all this stuff in the bin. And what did he do? He charged them for their grain that he took from them. All right, made Pharaoh a ton of money. Joseph opened the storehouse and sold the grain to the Egyptians, for the famine was severe throughout all of Egypt. And all the countries came to Egypt to buy grain from Joseph because the famine was severe all over the world. Jacob learned that there was grain in Egypt. And he said to his sons, I said Isaac a while ago, I misspoke. Jacob was grain in Egypt. He said to his sons, why do you just keep looking at each other? They're sitting around, and I have a picture of like there's one bean, and they're trying to divide it 12 different ways. And he's saying, why are you all looking at each other? Let's go buy some grain. He continued, I've heard that there's grain in Egypt. Go buy some so that we may live and not die. It's a bad famine. Joseph was the governor of the land, the one who sold the grain to all its people. So when Joseph's brother arrived, they bowed down to him. Wow. I mean, the Bible is just so understated. I love it. What is happening right here? Here's Joseph. They don't know it's Joseph. He disguised himself. I don't know if he wore a Groucho Marx nose, but they didn't recognize him. It's been 13 years since they saw him. They bowed down to him. They're seeing an Egyptian in the whole Egyptian regalia. They're not looking for a brother who they think is dead. And they're bowing down to him. And you know what was on Joseph's heart. He's looking there going, oh my. And if he's like me, what's he thinking about doing? I told you. I told you so. He recognized them. He pretended to be a stranger and spoke harshly to them. Where do you come from, he asked. From the land of Canaan, they replied, to buy food. Although Joseph recognized his brothers, they did not recognize him. And then he remembered his dreams about them and said to them, you're spies. This is interesting. You're spies. You've come to see where our land is unprotected. And I bet they were about to have a cow right there. Speaking of cows, fat ones and lean ones. The third day, Joseph said to them, do this and you will live, for I fear God. If you're honest men, that should have been a key to them. That's not something an Egyptian would say. I fear God. If you're honest men, let one of your brothers stay here in prison while the rest of you go and take grain back for your starving households. What's he doing? You give him a test. You still going to sell out one another? You're going to sell out one another like you sold me out? This is colored, this whole incident, these incidents have colored Joseph's thinking. I mean, he's not this stoic, doesn't have any, oh, I'm above all this. No, he wants to check some stuff out. The rest of you take the grain for your starving household. You must bring your youngest brother. Man, that must have sounded strange to them. How did this guy know we've got a younger brother? It's going to get stranger. But you must bring your youngest brother to me so that your words may be verified and that you may not die. And this they proceeded to do. And I don't hold anything against the brothers here. I mean, this is the king of the whole place, They're at his mercy, and he's putting his thumb down on it. They said to one another, surely we're being punished because of our brother. Had they had a little guilt all of those 13 years? Oh, yeah, they'd seen their dad, and they'd see his shoulder slumped, and they knew what was going on. We saw how distressed he was when he pleaded with us for his life, but we would not listen. And that's why his distress has come upon us. So Joseph's not the only one that's been in prison. He's been in a real prison. They've been in the prison of their deeds, and their sins have brought them low. And they're thinking like we do. I mean, I love reading the story because these are human beings. And they think and they have like us, and they have the same emotions that we have. This drought must be because of us, because we sold out our brother. It was. They've been living in their own prison. Reuben replied, didn't I tell you not to sin against the boy? There you go. He's not above saying, I told you so. But you wouldn't listen. Now we must give an accounting for his blood. And they did not realize that Joseph could understand them since he was using an interpreter. Oh, my. Some of you that understand a foreign language, you have people speaking that foreign language. They don't know that you understand what they're saying. It's really interesting to say something later on, say, oh, and you speak in their language, and they go, oh, what did we say? They're talking in front of Joseph. He understands every word. They think they're talking, and nobody's hearing, but he's hearing every word. He heard their words, and he's dying. He turned away from them again to weep, but then he turned back and spoke to them again. He had Simeon taken from them and bound before their eyes. They go home. They come back without Simeon. They come back with food, but they come back without Simeon. And the father Jacob said to them, you have deprived me of my children. Joseph is no more, and now Simeon is no more. And now you want to take Benjamin. Everything is against me. I mean, I wish I could read that with the pathos that's in that statement. His world is falling apart. All he's got is a bunch of worthless guys that have proven that they don't have much stuff inside of them, except bad stuff. And Reuben said to his father, you may put both of my sons to death if I did not bring him back to you. I bet his sons are going, whoa, Dad, what in the world? Entrust him to my care, and I will bring him back. But Jacob said, my son will not go down there with you. Oh my, what a stinging rebuke. If you prove yourself untrustworthy, people will see, and you will pay a price. Your reputation will be sullied, and Reuben will not be able to do this because he doesn't trust Reuben. It's been hard for me all of my life. I used to think Reuben was my hero. He tried to save everything. But no, Reuben, he wasn't a hero in that situation. Reuben was pretty chicken. He was afraid of what his dad would say if they killed the son, but he wasn't strong enough to stand up against these murdering guys. And now he said, hey, I'll stand good for him. And his dad said, no, I've seen you. This ain't happening. If harm comes to him on the journey you are taking, you will bring my gray head down to the grave in sorrow. This is Judah. Judah had sand. That was the word I was looking for. Judah said to Israel, his father, send the boy along with me, and we will go at once, so that we and you and our children may live and not die. He said, look at the situation, Dad. We're still in a drought, and we're going to die. I, myself, will guarantee his safety. You can hold me personally responsible for him. See the difference in the two promises? Reuben said, you can kill my kids. Judah said, you can kill me. Leave my family out of it. This is me standing here saying, this will come back. Benjamin will come back. I put my life on, you kill me. If that's not the case. Hold me personally responsible for him. If I do not bring him back and set him before you, I will bear the blame for all of my life. As it is, if we had not delayed, we could have gone and returned twice. See, we've been dilly-dallying around. We could have gone back and got more several times. When Joseph came home, they presented to him the gifts they had brought into the house. They now go back. They brought, what I left out is the story where he said he gave double the amount of money because they had brought home. I didn't say that too. When Joseph sent them back without Simeon, he hid all their money in their packs. So they came back with all their money, not with Simeon. And the dad's going, man, didn't you even check your suitcases before you loaded them? They obviously didn't have TSA in those days. He brought all those gifts back and more. And they brought him into the house, and they bowed down before him at the ground. He asked them how they were, and he said, how is your aged father that you told me about? Is he still alive? And they replied, your servant, our father, is still alive, and he's well. And they bowed low to pay him honor. Doubled on that promise. As he looked about, he saw his brother Benjamin, his own mother's son. He asked, is this your youngest brother, the one you told me about? And he said, God be gracious to you, my son. Deeply moved at the sight of his brother. All these others are his stepbrother. Benjamin is his brother. And he said to God, be gracious to you, my son. Deeply moved at the sight of his brother, Joseph hurried out, looked for a place to weep, and he went into his private room and wept there. It's like they had this whole group of people, all of his servants around and all of his brothers there, and he wants to cry. I mean, his heart is broken because he's seeing all of this. It says something about Joseph's heart, doesn't it? He finally had those guys where he wanted. He could do anything with them. But now he saw his brother, and his brother's okay, and he wept. After he had washed his face, he came out, controlling himself, served the food. I love this. This is so cool. I would have loved to have been at that table. They served him by himself, the brothers by themselves, because the Egyptians who were with him by themselves, because the Egyptians could not eat with Hebrews. There's that bias, for that is detestable to the Egyptians. The Egyptians didn't even eat with Joseph because he was a Hebrew. The men had been seated before him in the order of their ages. That's impressive. John, you have all your brothers come here, and I'm going, which is the oldest, which is the younger? It would be impressive if we set them all down in the right order. And he set them down, all these are adult men. And he sets them oldest to the youngest. And they're going, wait a minute, how's this working? From the firstborn to the youngest, they looked at each other in astonishment. When the portions were served to them from Joseph's table, Benjamin's portion was not double, not triple, 5 times as much as anyone else. So they feasted, they didn't fast. They feasted and drank freely with him. Why is Benjamin getting all this food? Did he look skinnier than the rest? Just a great, great meal. It's like you have turkey and dressing, so you give everybody a cut of turkey, and you give Benjamin the whole turkey. Okay, let's go on. Joseph was still in the house when Judah and his brothers came in. They threw themselves to the ground before him. Joseph said to them, what is this that you have done? Don't you know that a man like me can find out things by divination? What can I say, my Lord? What I did not put in this reading is they all got all their stuff. They loaded them up. And Joseph hid a palace cup in Benjamin's pack. And they get part way, and the Egyptians chase them, and they find the cup in Benjamin's pack. Joseph was still in the house when Judah and his brothers came in. They threw themselves to the ground before him. Joseph said to them, what have you done? Don't you know a man like me can find out things by divination? What can we say, my Lord? Judah replied. What can we say? How can we prove our innocence? God has uncovered your servant's guilt. We are now my Lord's slaves. We ourselves and the one who was found to have the cup. But Joseph said, far be it from me to do that. Your servant, my father, said to us, you know that my wife bore me 2 sons. One of them went away from, I skipped again. That's the father speaking. Anyway, they sent him back. He kept Benjamin. Joseph was still in the house when they came. Your servant, my father, said to us, you know that my wife bore me 2 sons. One of them went away from me, and I said, he has surely been torn into pieces, and I have not seen him since. No, I'm sorry, this is Judah talking. If you take this one from me too, and harm comes to him, you will bring my gray head down to the grave in ministry. So now if the boy is not with us when I go back, your servant, my father, and if my father, whose life is closely bound up with the boy's life, sees the boy isn't there, he will die. Your servants will bring the gray head of our father down to the grave in sorrow. Your servants guaranteed the boy's safety to my father. I said, if I do not bring him back to you, I will bear the blame before you, my father, all my life. Now then, please let your servant remain here as my Lord's slave in place of the boy, and let the boy return to his brothers. How can I go back to my father if the boy is not with me? I love Judah. He's doing the right thing here. He's standing up and living up to his promise. No, do not let me see the misery that would come upon my father. He accepted all the blame. Joseph is so touched by what happens. So then Joseph could no longer control himself for all his attendants, and he cried out, everybody get out of here of my presence. So there was no one with Joseph when he made himself known to his brothers. How did he do that? I don't know. If we needed to know, we would have been told. And he wept so loudly the Egyptians heard him, and Pharaoh's household heard about it. Joseph said to his brothers, I am Joseph. Is my father still living? He still didn't trust him. He said, our father's doing well. He said, no, I need to know. You've lied so many times. I need to know. But his brothers were not able to answer because they were terrified. Oh, no. The only thing I can kind of compare this to, I remember at my house, and I was kicking a ball around, and I kicked a ball and broke a big old window. And that's that feeling. Oh, I'm going to die. This is just not going to work out. This is not going to go well for me. Then Joseph said to his brothers, come close to me. And I bet there's like like my dog when she's had an accident. Come here. When they had done so, he said, I am your brother Joseph, the one you sold to Egypt. And now do not be distressed. And do not be angry with yourselves for selling me here, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you. Just think of that statement. It was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you. God sent me. Your hatred, all these things was God. And that's the only thing that's going to allow Joseph to do what he does and be as magnanimous as he is. God sent me ahead of you. For 2 years now there's been famine in the land. For the next 5 years there will be no plowing and reaping. But God sent me ahead of you to preserve for you a remnant on the earth, to save your lives by a great deliverance. God wanted to birth a nation. Israel was not there. God needed a nation to bring his son into the world. And so he used Potiphar's wife. He used Potiphar. He used those Ishmaelite bands. He used a forgetful butler to get his people on the earth. So that it was not you who sent me here, but God. He made me father to Pharaoh, lord of the entire household, and ruler of all Egypt. So they sent word to Joseph saying, your father, and these instructions before he died, this is what you're to say to Joseph. I ask you to forgive your brothers the wrongs they've committed in treating you so badly. Now please forgive the sins of your servants, of the God your father. And when the message came to him, Joseph wept. His brothers then came and threw themselves down before him. We are your slaves, they said. Joseph said, don't be afraid. Am I in the place of God? You undid it. This is after Joseph dies. After his father dies. After Jacob dies. They think Joseph's going to kill him. And he said, don't be afraid. Am I in the place of God? You intended to do harm to me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done. The saving of many lives. So then don't be afraid. I will provide for you and your children. And he reassured them, and they spoke kindly to them. That which they feared was that which was going to bring a blessing into their life. Well, some lessons very quickly. God's lessons are God's providence is precise. We looked at that. That Ishmaelite band came by at exactly the right time. And they were at the slave trading, the slave selling block at exactly the right time, so that Potiphar could buy that slave. And the butler and the baker were there. The butler. The cupbearer was falsely accused. And why was he in prison? Because God needed him to get hold of Joseph. And why did he forget? Because God needed him to get hold of Pharaoh. So God's going to do what he's going to do. His providence is precise. As God's providence is sure. God sent me before you to preserve life. You may be having a tough time. There may be things going hard in your life, and you're going, what in the world? I'm not doing anything wrong. Tell me, besides being impudent to his brothers, what did Joseph do wrong ever? Nothing. And he could have become bitter because he didn't deserve anything that happened to him. Even if he was impudent, he didn't deserve to be sold. And he didn't deserve to be lied about because he stood up and did the right thing in front of Potiphar's wife. And he got thrown in prison for it. And he could have become bitter, and he could have just groused and complained and become a curmudgeon beyond belief. But he did not, because he saw God and what everybody else saw problems. Man conspires, man and perspires, but God makes it happen. It's okay to dream. Joseph had a dream. Wasn't anything wrong with the dreams. In fact, those dreams came true. Joseph made some plans, but he got thrown into jail, got sold into slavery, thrown into jail. And he made plans everywhere he was, and all of those plans fell to pieces. Why? Because God was making something far greater happen. He's not only going to birth his nation, he's going to save thousands and millions of people because of Joseph listening to God's dreams. And we need to understand, this is, if you don't get any other lesson from Joseph, God is in control. God's purpose back then was to save souls, to save people, to save the world through his son and the nation that would birth his son. What's his purpose now? God sent his son to save sinners, of whom I am the chief, as Paul said. The chief, not the chiefest. God is in control. We need to understand that when things go sour, and they will, God can use those things and could likely be using those things for your good. Even if you cause some of those problems, he may bring about repentance in you that you needed to repent of so that you could get to a place where you were far better. Now, there's a ton of bad things that happen in this world. A ton of horrible things, inexplicable things. If we understand that God's in charge, we'll be able to make it through and see on the other side. Even if people are against us and hate our intestines, because I can't say guts in church, he hate our intestines, God can use that hatred to bring about glory to his name. God is in control. I need to remind myself, Bill does that a lot. We start talking about politics and how our world's coming apart, and he said, Bill will always say, well, God's in control. Love that man, Bill Hedrick. How does God do this? Nobody in these stories did anything they didn't want to do other than Joseph. Brothers wanted to hate, and God used that hatred to get Joseph where he needed him. Potiphar's wife was full of lust. Is that a good thing? No, that's a horrible thing. That's a sin. But God used her sinful inclinations to bring out the character of the young man that she had her eye upon, and made him stronger because he was able to stand. And God used a forgetful butler. God knew about the butler's forgetfulness. Not the butler, I'm sorry, the cupbearer's forgetfulness. And that's why he was there. Joseph could have gotten bitter. This time, once again, I've been forgotten. But no, God's in charge. He will work it out. And that's the last lesson. God is in charge. 3 lessons to get to there. But there's a lot of lessons. We talked about Calvin and are we irresistibly saved? No, but God is working in our lives. And he'll use his foreknowledge to know what we'll decide and what we'll do when those circumstances happen. And so he will provide. Trust God. Look to God. He's trying to get our attention every day of our lives, and we need to not get so preoccupied with this world that we forget. God knows, and God will work, and we need to turn to him. He wants us to look right at him in all circumstances, in the good and the bad. Joseph looked at him in the very bad, and he looked at him in the very good. And it allowed him to be as gracious and loving and merciful as he was toward his brothers, because he understood God's in this deal. It's not just us. Can I hear an amen on that? God is in this deal, not just us. We're not